Hey everybody, welcome to the latest edition of Sketchy Go Ichie. I'm your host, Roger Andrews, illustrator, artist, graphic designer, content creator. Content I'm creating for you today is Wanda Vision. Yes, Disney Plus has done it again. Another big, super worldwide pop culture phenomenon. So I created a little piece of fan art in color, in Procreate. So I'll tell you how I did it, and if you pick up anything along the way, we're all the better for it. Anyways, stay tuned and enjoy.
Sketchy Go Ichie.
All right, we're back. Here we are. How to draw Wanda Vision, or as I grew up calling it, Scarlet Witch and the Vision, or Vision and Scarlet Witch. When I say grew up, I mean I read comic books of the Avengers when I was a little kid back in the past decades, and so these characters were kind of like, I'm not going to say sideline characters. I mean, they both at some point or together have had their own series in the Marvel Comics universe. But I'll be honest with you, I mean, I was amazed that Disney and Marvel Studios chose to sort of do this huge series on them, this mysterious series, the series with left a lot of people guessing the first several episodes. And so I was kind of amazed they chose these characters to kind of make happen. But if you think about Marvel Comics history, or should I say Marvel Studios history, the fact that they really were launched or catapulted with the Iron Man character, which again had his own series for years, but was kind of like, you know, one of the leaders of the Avengers in the comics, and it had some character flaws, and was, in the pantheon of all-time great Marvel characters, but wouldn't be the one that I would consider the most iconic. Certainly Spider-Man in that universe would hold that mantle. But Marvel does it over and over and over again. I mean, Guardians of the Galaxy. I mean, you're talking obscure stuff that gets turned into something that is, immensely entertaining. And so speaking of immensely entertaining, I love the sketching stage, which is what we just breeze through in my rambling way. But the sketching stage is where it's at for me. Secondarily to that would probably be the end color stage. But in between is this inking portion. And you can see me here quickly sort of like throwing some solid line on top of that sort of the Vision character. By the way, these are the visions from the comic books that I alluded to earlier, and so the costuming and everything is reflected as such, not the movie versions. And so the inking stage, yes, you got to kind of tidy up those lines, and in order for me to have that sort of comic book appearance, that look, that solid black ink line that gets filled in with color. And so here I zoom in on the faces of both. Particularly Scarlet Witch, aka Wanda. And as you can see here, I mean, once you zoom in on these, it's not terribly complicated in terms of like stylistically what I'm doing with these faces. I try to find what I call an economy of line, or what I've heard referred to as economy of line. And meaning, like, I like to try to convey as much of the volumes and the shapes of characters just using a single solid line, or the smallest amount of lines needed to convey that volume, if that makes sense. And in this case, for example, I'm drawing the arms and I'm drawing the hair. It's essentially a stroke, a brush stroke, or an ink line stroke that represents the flow and the curls of the hair. And here, where you see me sort of rendering the cape, or I'm starting to render her legs. Of course, I could sort of kind of texture and taper the line, or I could render it in solid blocks of color and then go back in and add shadow. I save that part for a little later on, but I like to have that binding contour line, and I try to flavor the line up by meaning I vary the line weights. If you watch some of my previous videos, I kind of talk about. Matter of fact, I spent whole videos on how to ink line, and I know a lot of artists. That's kind of their stumbling block, ink line, and conveying the shapes and things they want to do. It's it's what you're gonna hear in any video where they're expressing like how we draw or how I draw something as a professional. Tons of practice. It's really all it is, and study. And if you can see some other artists who really capture an ink line in a way that is really appealing to you, study how they do it. For me, again, I'm just sort of bringing in the influences of my childhood to, particularly in how some of the classic artists used to render, and I bring that to my inking stage here, particularly in where I spot the blacks. By spotting the blacks, I mean essentially filling in black areas that represent shadow. So basically, like behind Vision's, sort of like the underarm area there between his chest or where the cape meets, and sort of the way it flows upward, the cape off to the right, and that's really all there is to it. It's just a lot of study, a lot of practice, and then if you really want to add another element of observation, it's composition. If you notice here, like the way I've laid the characters out, there's almost this sort of strange sort of S shape that happens. It starts at the right corner, goes through the center of the image, and then back off to the left corner. I like that S curve. I like that sort of that layout configuration, and I do that for a lot. And I also like to take elements and flow them off camera and then into the center. And that's what I'm doing here with this sort of magical effect, Wanda's magical effect. The chaos magic, I think it's called in the comics. I think that's what they refer to it as in the TV series as well. And I like bringing the elements off to the side. And also referring back to the spotting of the blacks, here's another element. With the hair, I was just gonna actually color the hair in solid blocks of color, but I chose instead to fill it with black because I thought there's a sort of dimension that it creates. And by having that much dense black in the center of the image, you're gonna see when I pull out, it sort of draws your eye towards Wanda's face and head. It's a little composition trick, and I think that's why spotted blacks was used so much in comics, because it allows you to draw the viewer's eye to where you want it on the page. And sometimes just by adding a drop shadow or a shadow behind a character, you can draw the eye towards the center. Hopefully you can see that here, where if you look in the center of the image, hopefully that's framed her face in a way, the black fill that I did on the hair. And this is reading right now. All right, so we're moving into the color stage. By the way, I should mention, this is in Procreate. It's probably about a 5-layered image, background layer that's sort of gray. The sketchy layer that you saw me doing in the early part of the video has its own layer. On top of that is the black ink line. And then in between the two, I created another layer that represents the solid fills. The fills of color is what I'm doing here. And then I actually did an additional layer so that way I could have Wanda in all her reds and pinks, and then Vision in all of his sort of greens and yellows on their own separate layers. And so that way if I wanted to manipulate Vision in full, I could do that. And you can kind of see, if you notice, I've sort of ghosted Vision back a bit. I've kind of I've played around with the filters. I've got a bunch of videos on how to really manipulate color and manipulate things in Procreate. And if I'm being clear, actually, there is probably a 6th layer, and that would represent this shadow layer. If you notice, like, I'm adding this sort of what is referred to as like kind of cell animation, cell style shading, which is just a simple sort of, like in anime they do this a lot, where a lot of it is just a simple sort of single light source along one side of the character, and it kind of creates this this illusion of depth without having this really highly rendered image. So as you can see here, I'm doing the same thing for Vision on the shadowing. Essentially, I'm assuming that the light source is probably coming from her magic, and so if he's kind of ghosted off in the background, I just imagine the light projecting along, I guess would be sort of from the right side of the image towards the left, creating that dark shadow on the side. So here now I'm kind of playing around. I'm sort of manipulating the highlights. I'm trying to add some glow to the magical effect, that chaos magic effect. So the reality, it's actually a 7th layer. So I thought I had 5. In reality, I had 7 layers. That layer is on top of. It's actually in between. And anyone who uses Procreate will know the layering process you can shift layers up and down within the sort of the layer order, thus allowing you to have greater effects. And that allows me, if you notice that I've really ghosted back the vision by darkening the background. So now I'm putting the finishing touches in. All right, I'm sold on this. 7 layers. Watch some of my previous videos, watch some of my future videos. I'm going to give you some real clear definition on how to do your layer orders and how to play around with all these different effects. All right, so that's it. Closing the book. Wanda Vision. Love the show. Hope you guys love drawing. I hope you guys choose to do your own fan art. And that's that. All right, sketchy go ichie. Live your moment. Happy sketching, y'all. Hey guys, you know YouTube loves when you click the like button. Check it out. Subscribe. Click the bell icon for more notifications. Peace.